Imagine you have to build a bank, not for a city or even a country, but for a population the size of all of Europe, scattered across hundreds of thousands of tiny villages. That was the unbelievable challenge India faced, and this is the story of how one simple idea, cooperation, grew over a century to tackle that monumental task.
So let's just think about that for a second. How do you build a bank for 800 million people? We're not just talking about scale here. We're talking about designing a system for a farmer who literally depends on the rain, for an artisan in a village miles from the nearest road. The diversity is immense, the numbers are just staggering, and the stakes? Well, they couldn't be higher.
And the answer, which started to take shape more than 100 years ago, wasn't some fancy top-down corporate model. Nope, it was a grassroots idea, built from the bottom up. It was a single, powerful concept that became the bedrock for everything that followed: cooperation.
So why cooperation? What made that the magic ingredient? Well, to get that, we have to rewind the clock to the turn of the 20th century. For farmers across India, the problem was brutally simple. They couldn't get fair credit. They were trapped by local moneylenders. So they didn't just need a bank, they needed a bank that was actually on their side.
Okay, but an idea is just that, an idea, until you give it some real structure, right? Before you can build a single branch, you have to lay the foundation. And this first phase, which happened even before India's independence, was all about taking that spirit of cooperation and turning it into something legal, something real, something that could actually work.
And what's so cool is how deliberately this was all put together. It all started with a simple recommendation back in 1901. Then, just a few years later in 1904, that idea becomes law, giving birth to the very first primary agricultural credit societies, we'll call them PACs. And then, only 10 years after that, another committee comes along and says, hey, let's think bigger, sketching out a whole 3-level structure. So, in just over a decade, you've got the seed, the first sprout, and the blueprint for an entire forest. The foundation was officially set.
Now, fast forward to after 1947. India is independent. And suddenly, that early sketch isn't going to cut it anymore. The challenge just exploded. It was time to take all those scattered local societies and weld them together into a powerful nationwide system. India needed the final architectural plans for its rural financial network.
And those plans? They arrived in 1954. The All India Rural Credit Survey Committee, headed by A.D. Gorwala, basically became the chief architect of the whole modern cooperative banking system in India. Their report wasn't just some dusty document. It was the detailed, official design that would shape everything for decades to come. And this is the brilliant structure they came up with. It's a 3-tier system, and it's so logical. Right at the bottom, at the village level, you have the PACs. They're the front line, the direct connection to the farmers. Then, one level up, you've got the District Central Cooperative Banks, or DCCBs. Their job is to oversee and fund all the PACs in their district. And at the very top, you have the State Cooperative Banks, the SCBs. They're the apex, connecting the whole state network to the national financial system. It's like a pyramid, with each level supporting the one below it.
So you've got this elegant 3-tier structure that reaches from the tiniest village all the way up to the state capital. But it needed one more thing: a constant source of financial power to keep it running. And that final crucial piece clicked into place in 1982 with the creation of NABARD, the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. You can think of NABARD as the central power station for this entire grid, constantly refinancing the network to make sure the lights never go out.
Now, this system worked wonders for decades, but as the 20th century started turning into the 21st, the world was changing fast, and this massive structure, built for a totally different era, was starting to show its age. By the early 2000s, it was facing a pretty stark choice: renovate or risk collapse. And if you want a perfect picture of just how outdated the system had become, just listen to this description from the source material. Banking was still being done with, quote, huge ledger books, and write everything down with a pen. I mean, can you imagine that in the age of the internet? It wasn't just charmingly old-fashioned, it was painfully slow, inefficient, and a major roadblock to progress. The solution, of course, was to digitize everything. Back in 2001, a committee recommended a massive overhaul, all centered around putting in a core banking system, or CBS. The simplest way to think about a CBS is as the bank's digital nervous system. It's a central software that lets any branch see customer data in real time. This was the jump from paper and pen to a modern, connected digital network.
But hey, new technology alone wasn't going to fix everything. A lot of these cooperative banks were struggling financially.
So in 2004, another committee introduced what they called revival packages. This was basically a critical financial injection, a rescue plan from the government to shore up the weakest links in the chain and stop them from failing.
You know, all this talk of structure and government help brings up a really interesting question. This whole three-tier system was powerful, for sure, but it also came with a lot of government oversight. What if a cooperative just wanted to be free, to operate with total autonomy, run only by its members, for its members?
And this slide lays out the two different paths that emerged perfectly. It was a real fork in the road. On one side, you have the traditional model. Lots of government involvement, which means access to public money, but not a lot of freedom. On the other side, you have this radical new idea from 1995 called the Max Act. Complete member control, total autonomy, but here's the catch. You're on your own financially. For the very first time, cooperatives had a real choice about what they wanted to be.
And that brings us right up to today. The story of cooperation is now entering its most ambitious chapter by far. We're not just talking about getting computers into banks anymore. We're talking about connecting every single one of those village-level societies into one seamless digital ecosystem, basically taking cooperation into the cloud. And the pace of change in just the last few years has been absolutely breathtaking. I mean, look at this. You've got a huge push for computerization in 2017, a brand new Ministry of Cooperation formed in 2021 to quarterback all of this, and a massive national database launch in 2023. This is it. This is the final all-out push to connect every last village society to that digital core and bring this century-long project firmly into the modern age.
So after this incredible 100-year journey from handwritten ledgers to cloud banking, we kind of end up right back where we started, with a big question. In an age where you can send money around the world in an instant, what is the future of a movement built on the simple human idea of people helping people? The technology has changed beyond recognition, but the answer to that question? Well, that's what will define the next chapter of this incredible story.